This is the One Up Network. You're listening to One Up Yours for Friday, October the 20th. We had an awesome day yesterday. Sony PS3. And following up today, we have Ted Price in the studio. He's going to be with us for the whole show. Got a fantastic show. Here's what we got coming up for you. We got our opening segment. We're going to do the normal What You've Been Playing stuff. We have John back with us today, so we'll have community input.
Yeah, someone's reading you. You know, like these bastards who ignored you last week.
I read the threads that had my name in the subject.
Well, that's what you always do.
He does.
I don't think I didn't listen to the show last week either.
Oh.
When you attempted to make a joke and failed miserably, Garnet.
Wait. That could be any number of weeks that we've done.
All right,
this show. You're talking about what's going to happen on this show.
Back to the rundown part of the show. Anyway, so in the second part, we're going to be talking with Ted. Entire second part will be about Resistance, and then we'll also get into some stuff about game development, PS3, general culture, all that kind of stuff. Third part, has there been any news this week, Luke?
No, none.
Okay, so obviously the third part will be very boring because there's nothing to talk about.
There's nothing that made anyone angry this week. Nothing about microtransactions, nothing about Sony, nothing about EA, nothing.
So you could just talk about going to get your hair cut this week then, huh?
Yeah, I am. I'm getting a haircut.
What's the name of the hairdresser you're going to, Luke?
Well, her name is Cole.
And where does she work?
A place called Cowboys and Angels.
Fantastic.
Oh, my God.
That's Brian Intihar, the preview editor from EGM. He's sitting in with us
That's
today.
right. So, by the way, here's that joke that's going to fail. So I saw the crop duster leaving this morning. That's why Shane's not here.
That kind of worked for me. Did you write that last night?
I like that.
Did you have Suzanne approve that?
I like that.
All right. So where do we want to go? Let's do what you've been playing first. Who wants to jump in there first? John, I haven't seen you around. Have you had a chance to even been playing anything?
I have, yeah. I played a lot of Need for Speed Carbon, which is out in a couple of weeks, I believe. I played the 360 version. I played a little bit of the PS2 and the Xbox version. Need for Speed Pink, I think it should be called.
Need for Speed.
The good kind. What kind of pink?
Time to take a year off.
Well, I think apparently they are going to take a year off now. I think
really?
Next year there's not going to be one.
That's a good idea.
I mean, it's not bad. It's sort of.
No, it's not a bad game. It's
No.
just, I'm just kind of need a break.
Yeah, it's Underground 2-ish. It's all at night again. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, but I mean, it's very much Need for Speed again, as opposed to them really doing anything. All that. I mean, they're trying to make a big deal about this Canyon mode and some of the online stuff, but it really is them, just pushing the same thing over again.
See, I really get the Underground part, but I haven't played it as much as you have. But from the 2 times I've demoed it, it really felt like Underground 2, which to me I thought was good. I really liked Underground 2, but I didn't know if I just wanted more of it.
I can't go into it too much because it's not out for a couple of weeks. So,
yeah,
but
my comment of take a year off is just me being a jerk.
Oh, apologize already.
Oh, boy.
Well, the biggest thing I'm going to be looking for when it comes out is whether or not they're able to fix the performance, which every time I've demoed it, it's had moments.
360 version was great. It looked like it was running at 60 frames.
Good.
And so all that. I mean, that's
cool.
If you've not played another Need for Speed, it's you can't go wrong.
It's like a whole new experience.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, what else have you been playing?
What else have I been playing?
Anything portable?
Yeah.
You've been traveling.
I'm reviewing ATV Off-Road Fury. What's it called, Skip? It has a name a lot like all the other ATV Off-Road Fury games. Pro.
It's the Climax.
Is it
It's
the
Climax game, yeah.
Right. So it's just the next Climax ATV game.
Yeah.
You get some good games.
I get the good shit, yeah.
That's the power of editorial director.
Exactly. Skip randomly plucks games from his list and then tells me, that review's due in a couple of days, John.
Do you have anybody on Search yet?
This game has wheels. Let's give it to John.
Yeah. And I'm also playing Vice City Stories.
Oh, now that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, which I'm enjoying. That's renewing my love for the PSP, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
just because it's renewing my love for GTA more than the PSP, I guess. But it's between that and then last night I played for just a quick 15-20 minutes. I put Bully in.
And
That game, when I have the time, that game's getting a ton of my time. I love it.
Yeah, well, of course, we all got really excited about it. I want to go back just for 1 second to the Vice Cities, though. One thing they talked about a lot was being able to improve the performance by focusing on the PSP version. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Draw distance better. There's not much pop-up. It's faster. And it's a bit more...
Is it hitting the disc a lot?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a battery sucker.
So it's still going to be a battery
definitely.
drain.
But the graphics are noticeably better. And also they changed the mission structure a lot, so it's looking a lot more like a traditional GTA game where the missions are more... Do you play Liberty City Stories?
A little bit.
It was little tiny nugget. It was like, go here, do this, and that was a mission. Whereas that was coming off the back end of San Andreas, which was these long, convoluted missions that had like 5-6 parts. They're back into sort of that middle ground where it's a lot more like Vice City.
How much of this 80 soundtrack comes through?
Oh, there's a lot of it, yeah.
Awesome. That'll hook me right there.
And it's actually, I think, technically the first game in the storyline, if I remember rightly. It's weird. The timeline's all messed up, but it's actually right at the very beginning because it's pre-Vice City.
Yeah, because you meet the guy.
Well, you meet Lance.
Yeah.
Who's
the brother of the guy who like gets shot down in the beginning of the Vice City, right?
So this is actually the very beginning of the story, whereas the previous PSP was the very end of the story.
Wow, it's cool.
I guess if I need a history lesson on GTA,
I played all of them all the way through. So you want to know about the Salvatores or anything like that?
It'll be the Grand Theft canon one day sitting on the desk. It'll be like 4 inches.
Oh wow!
But you, Brian, what you been playing, dude?
Oh man, I'm embarrassed. I've been sucked into the Phantasy Star Universe beta.
It got extended.
You can't be
Saturday.
You know what? I saw that last night, and I was like, do I turn on my 360 and start playing? Then I keep realizing that my character in 2 days is going to be completely wiped out. So I spent last weekend spent 18 hours playing the beta.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and like for the first 2 hours, I absolutely hated it. I'm like, this game is terrible. They ruined Phantasy Star. And then I finally just got it, figured out where to go and what to do because the tutorial is horrible.
Does it play like the Dreamcast one?
Yeah, but it plays better. Like once you're in, the fighting system is way better. Like in terms of you can have a pistol one hand, a sword in the other, first person shooting. There's like a combo system now, depending on with the photon arts. You can string together 6-hit combos. And I wasn't crazy about the art design, but once I figured out where to go and how to start missions, and I was totally sucked in and reading all the fan sites and going, okay, how do I create this weapon? And it's really good.
So we go to The Departed last weekend, Saturday night show.
Oh no! Don't tell this story, please.
What?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So we go and Mark and Anna are there, of course, and Brian's there, and I'm like, so what you guys been up to? And Anna looks at me and goes, points at Mark. He hasn't even slept. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, he has been playing Phantasy Star Universe non-stop since
Mark and I played, every single time I would level up and he wasn't playing, I would message him through Xbox Live and say, level 13, catch up, bitch. And my girlfriend was gone for the whole weekend. I was like,
wow, that was good timing.
And she was like, sure, it's okay, I'm gone. I'm like, yes, no problem. You stay with your friends, no problem.
And it was Mark didn't exactly come to bed. I think he just kind of took cat naps on the couch.
The first night he didn't go to bed. The first night I called it a day at 4 and he was still playing.
That's awesome.
But I out-leveled him. I did.
So Phantasy Star
that's
Universe.
What counts.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters. By Sunday night I had beaten him. So.
You have a bigger PS unit.
Apparently.
Whoa.
Yeah. I see what you did there.
That's a Garnet joke.
Yeah.
That was the one that's the joke that went this time.
They'll laugh. It'll be quoted on message boards later today.
Because it's you. Because you're a comedic god, Luke.
Right.
I just got a little hard when you said that. A little.
Wow.
You're making Ted uncomfortable.
So we'll let it run for a second.
Sorry.
You guys have been wrapping up Resistance. Have you had a chance to actually play games?
I've been playing a lot of Resistance.
Good choice.
Can you imagine?
Surprise.
Yeah.
How do you like that game?
You know what? I really dig it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I heard the guys who make it actually know what they're doing.
They do. It's been a good team effort for a long time.
Do you guys
your game's totally awesome. Tell us how awesome your game is.
How much more awesomer would it be if it was more awesome? So seriously, do you guys have a chance to get outside, or has it just been crunch time right now where you haven't had a chance to step outside of the game lately?
Well, I think today we're actually going to the factory. So over the last couple of weeks, people have been going on post-production vacations and definitely taking a break as we just finished up the last little pieces. Mostly we've been waiting around to make sure there aren't any serious bugs or problems coming back from format testing, but
that's cool.
We're in very good shape right now.
Anything you've seen lately that you're looking forward to or thought, wow, you know what, when I have some time, I might want to play this game?
Oh, we were talking about this last night. Guitar Hero 2, and I cannot wait for that game to come out. I'm really stoked for it.
So you guys have office competitions with that?
Yeah, we do. We do.
Oh, you're going to love it.
We last year we had a tournament, and one of our designers on Resistance, Jack Meyer, won. And this year we're having another tournament, but we may actually invite in maybe significant others and spouses to play, bass, lead.
You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. If you have time, we can go upstairs and you can check it out for a minute if you really, you want
really?
to.
That would be cool.
Yeah. We'll love to help you out
Let's see how
that.
the second segment goes. Don't get too fucking excited.
Hey, you know what? Regardless of how the segment comes out, I can have a Guitar Hero moment there. I mean, you know how that game is with me and Skip. You know how it is.
They're having a moment.
You gotta rock.
It's frightening when you see them.
You just got to rock. And we've been rocking too because Burning Crusade.
That's pretty much what I've been playing this week.
Yeah, I mean, me too.
It's a lot of fun. It's exactly like what I want it to be so far. I had to wait because there's this whole mess about getting the beta keys because of our email addresses or whatever. And when I finally got my beta key, I started making a new character while I was waiting for my 60 to port over. And then as soon as my 60 ported over, it was at like 6:30 some night, and I was like getting ready to leave and go get dinner, and I logged off of my new character and saw my ported character over, and I was like, nope, not leaving. Clicked on that thing and played here till like 11 or something.
So for anyone who hasn't seen or read about Luke's Warcraft thing, dude is like super uber in the game. What's that mount you have? Talk about like the mount, and then tell us about what's the 60 level content in the new section like? Because
tell us how big of a geek you really are.
Yeah, tell us.
Confess. No, I ride around on a big bug.
It's
which,
awesome.
Like World of Warcraft
so cool
players will
looking.
know, there's only like a small window on every server when you could have got one, and you had to do a bunch of horse shit to get it, and it involved like a bunch of stuff that you had to do and a bunch of stuff that you and 40 other people had to do. So it was like basically I have this nerdy thing to ride around on because of the work of a bunch of other people, really. And the new 60 content is really cool. There's a lot of stuff when you first get into the Outlands. There's a lot of like level 59 enemies that are pretty killable. But as you're riding around through the Outlands, there's some stuff that hits pretty hard. Where even on my own character, I'm like, oh god.
And how did you describe him for mine?
I was like, well, Garnet's level 60 has 2,700 hit points, which my character could kill in a second. Like I could cast 2 spells and Garnet's character dies. Like I could probably delete it. And these monsters because Garnet has a slow mount, he has a little one. And if the monsters will eat Garnet. They will eat him right off of his mount. Garnet will die.
That's okay. Luke will be there to protect me.
Yeah, sure, Garnet. Luke, come back. Garnet!
Luke on his bug mount will look after you.
Yeah, this really don't sound so optimistic. I was telling him he's going to have to, if I'm going to play my 60 with him, he's going to have to remind me how to play like that high level, because I haven't played high level Warcraft in like since December of last year. We're like, when I got into Warcraft, I had like that moment, where you're just like totally sucked in, played the hell out of it for like 4 months, and then just
bailed out.
Yeah, just lost it. Just stopped. What happened was the raiding guild period. We had to be like managing your points so that you could bid on items. You know what, dude? I hated that. As soon as that part hit, I was like, wow, this is really like draconian. I'm like,
would you rather random roll for that?
You know what? I don't.
Fate?
No, I wouldn't. I understand why it has to be like that, but it gets really political in those big guilds, and I was like, you know what? This is like really dampering the fun for me. So
yeah, it's totally a buzzkill.
Yeah, it was a big buzzkill.
Buzzkill. Talking about hearing you guys talk about guilds and whatever you guys.
Oh God,
Jesus! Christ.
After you just jerked off Phantasy Star Universe for 14 years.
So I'm going to go like the new character route too. Skip and I like both started, and you start a new character.
Yeah,
what do you think of the Blood Elves?
The Blood Elves are cool. I think that I'm going to make a Draenei too and just check out their starting zone. But like Skip has been loving the Blood Elf zone, and what I've seen of the Blood Elf zone, I think I'm level 8.5 or so on my Paladin from an afternoon, and it's really cool. The quests there's a lot of quests like kill a bunch of stuff and then pick up something and it keys you for another quest. So you have these like sort of continuing quests. It's a little bit better designed than the first time around.
I think you're seeing that they've learned a lot about how to transition quest to quest to quest without having each one just seem like a disconnected fetch.
And another thing too, like the new weapons that you're getting in these starting zones, you're getting like these stupid white worthless weapons, like white level weapons that look better than the stuff on my character. Like my little Paladin has a way cooler shield and sword than my Shaman's dagger and shield. Like it's just I've had this character for an hour.
I have to laugh though, because the Blood Elf females, it's obvious they were definitely going for bringing the sexy to the Horde, because like they're so slutty, slutty the way they stand around.
Blondes
anyway.
just want to have fun or something, right?
It's like have more hairstyles. They have more hairstyles for the female Blood Elves than they've had for the entire rest of the game.
Well, then the male Blood Elves, you can make like your own little Cloud Strife and then ride around on a frickin' chocobo and you get a mount. Like Blizzard, you're getting close to infringing on some IPs with this.
All right, so I guess we'll be playing more of that in the next week or so. So we'll probably have more updates on Burning Crusade.
Yes.
I'm sure the people out there...
you've been playing as well?
That really is just about all I've had time to play.
I thought you were playing Final Fantasy 12. Like,
dude, I'm still playing. I am still.
Yes,
we'll talk about that.
Let's go into minute detail like you did last week.
I thought you didn't listen.
No, I did listen.
Oh, okay.
Look, Shane and I argued it out.
I enjoyed your vigorous debate.
Shane and I argued it out. We talked about it on the One Up show this week. I still like Final Fantasy 12. But we've talked about it.
That game's great.
I totally love it.
Completely wrong.
Yeah, he's completely. I do get to play Rogue Galaxy over the weekend. I'm looking forward to that, which can be like a fun comparison between the two.
I thought that wasn't out until
It's coming out in the end of January, but we're going to have it on the 1UP show next week against Final Fantasy 12. So you'll be able to look at like both of them right there.
And that game's been changed a lot. They've
done a ton. They added a whole new planet.
Yeah.
They changed the way like the limit. What do they call them in that game? It's not limit breaks, but like the combo attacks or whatever.
Some weird. Yeah.
So we'll have more on that next week.
Okay.
And I know the community will be looking for that, but what have they been looking for? What have they been talking about this week?
What have they been talking about?
They gave you a whole
There was a bunch of stuff about yesterday. A lot of debate about the whole... was it Joystick or Kotaku that did a story about the that grid that they put up about what you would require to buy on an Xbox 360 in order to play games in the same way as a PS3? A lot of Xbox 360 owners got upset about that. Because Sony yesterday basically said, you need the HD DVD drive and you need this and that and the other and a hard drive if you're going to match the PS3. And I think that was misinterpreted by a bunch of people. A lot of chat about the fact that you only get composite cables.
I think that's ridiculous. I mean,
it's not really beckoning in the high definition era.
You want these games to look great, and they're supposed to be the greatest looking games, but we're going to give you like the worst inputs possible.
Well,
so since I miss things sometimes, so what you're telling me is the PS3 only comes with a standard single yellow RCA jack to plug in to your television.
How do you feel about that, Ted?
High def, baby.
Your game in 480 what? 480
480i.
Q?
480Q. Questionable.
480 LOL? But the thing is, like, for your average consumer, let's speak frankly for a second. They're expecting to go out, they're dropping $600 on a next-gen machine, and those little dudes, those sniveling dudes at Best Buy and Circuit City are always like, your system's only as good as your cables. That's the thing that they teach you to say.
And they're like, here's this cable
I was
for
like those sniveling dudes.
like
so
that.
someone goes out, gets a PS3, gets Resistance, goes home, plugs into their TV, expects it to look awesome, and they don't have the right cables. Well, they have the shitty cables.
Well, it depends on. First of all, if you have an HD TV, you're going to know what kind of cable to get, right?
Pretty good argument.
Well,
yeah.
HD TVs are penetrating middle America. I don't know if they're going to know.
If you go out and you spend the money on an HD TV, you know you need component cables, and so you're going to pick up the right equipment, guaranteed. The other thing though is that these games that are being made right now for the PlayStation 3 also look really good in 480i. There was some we tested Resistance extensively on NTSC TVs as well as HD TVs, and there was definitely a difference. Between this generation and last generation, and when you're playing it on an NTSC, there's just a lot more going on the screen. That said, of course, there is a big difference when you're going from NTSC to HD. But regardless, those games do look really good.
It just seems weird to me that Sony's pushing this HD and it's not including it in the box. I think that's my big
that
debate.
was kind of Style Died in '79 kicked off this thread, and it's now like 5-6 pages long, and it was just like, okay, can you at least give me a component cable? You don't have to give me an HDMI cable.
Yeah, HDMI. I'm not worried about component. Come on.
Yeah.
The 360 solution is kind of elegant because it's just one cable and you can use it either way.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
So what else? There was another thing there was some confusion about. Traveler started the thread. Nintendo gives the finger to GameCube owners once and for all. There was a series of pieces of misinformation on the GameCube version of Zelda yesterday. It's kicked off with "it's not happening," which obviously was wrong. And then there was "you're only going to be able to buy it in certain stores," and then which morphed into "you're only going to be able to order it from Nintendo.com." Does anyone know if Nintendo's actually made a statement yet?
I think they did say it's going to be sold in stores. I think they
it's December 13th.
Yeah.
Full distribution, right?
Yeah, but obviously they're gonna delay it. They want people to buy the Wii version, drives hardware sales. So
it's not gonna work.
The thing is, it all started because Japan said they were doing that. In Japan, they were gonna only sell it online.
Yeah.
So then that kind of came.
Look, it's the big hit game. It's the console that's launching with a really, really, really proven franchise, something that's been around for forever, that is like you almost anticipate. It's almost like a foregone conclusion. Hey, Zelda, okay, classic.
Well, if they have so much faith in it, why are they releasing a proven franchise with an unproven control scheme?
That's exactly why they're holding the other one. That's
obviously concerned.
Have you played it with the controls?
Oh yeah.
So what would you do?
Well, I'll be playing Legend of Zelda: The Twilight Princess on December 13th on my GameCube.
Now, my only question is, I'm totally just as concerned as you are, but is it because that whole demo set up so you're getting like 6 different gameplay mechanics within 10 minutes? Like,
possibly.
If you play Zelda, like you learn all these different things over a course of many hours. Like you're learning how to use the bow, you're learning how to use the boomerang, like at different stages. So now that fact you're throwing all this in 10 minutes.
That's the Bettenhausen defense.
No, but you know what? I know Shane slings a lot of bullshit, but he could be right.
Sounds like a chess move.
I'm saying
Bettenhausen defense.
Tried and true. I enjoyed the controls of Wind Waker. They were fine. On my Wavebird. Tried and true. I'm going to enjoy them on Twilight Princess. On my Wavebird. On my GameCube.
All right.
Not my GameCube with Waggle.
With Waggle.
GameCube with Waggle. That's called 6-axis.
Hey.
Mega Dude 139 started a thread that's now 5 pages long, which is called the official "I want to be just like Luke Smith when I grow up."
I read
thread.
this one.
I actually wrote that. That's actually me right now.
You're Mega Dude?
Yeah, I'm
Start
Mega Dude.
taking Rogaine at a very young age.
Yeah, what's the deal with people being concerned about my virginity or lack thereof in that thread? There's a lot of people wondering. I mean,
People are concerned for your well-being.
I've got some links to PornoTube I'll send you that are,
Yeah?
if you're into.
You should never have given him that.
I'm sorry, I just kind of dished that one up pretty easy.
Yeah.
Apparently, we have some guy called Ted Price coming on the podcast. There was a big long thread about things that we should ask him.
He works for Naughty Dog or something, right?
Like that, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, they did what? Jack and yeah.
No, that was Sly Cooper.
Oh, yeah. That was
The headset's off and Ted Price has just left.
one last thing. Indie asked, has Splinter Cell 4 been released in the US? Because the demo hit, and then EB had it listed for this week. Is it out? Is it
Yeah,
next week?
it's
right?
out.
It's out?
It's out.
Okay.
It's out.
Indie,
They had
it's
that
out.
silly party at Slide.
And it's 1080i, for anyone wondering.
Where did that come from, by the way?
Well, it came from GamePro, who said that they asked the Ubisoft representative, who I won't name because
Fine.
I'm professional, and he said that the Ubisoft rep said it was 1080p, and then the GamePro guy who wrote the story came up to me yesterday at the Gamers Day and was like, "Oh, I'm from GamePro and I wrote that story about 1080p and Double Agent, and they told us it was 1080p." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." I said, when I asked them, they said 1080i, and that's all they said. He's like, "Well, they told us, I swear." So it sounds like it was just someone on Ubisoft maybe not knowing the difference between 1080p and 1080i. Who does really anyway? Speaking of gaff.
No, I meant I didn't mean that. I didn't mean NeoGAF. I meant
you just created a string on Gaff right now, by the way, with that comment. Just want you to know that.
It's like step into the future. We'll see that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Page 2. What else have I been talking about? Is that it? Did we reach the end of the list?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think, for now.
It's a good
Aren't
point.
you guys sick of the 1080i, 1080p debate? Like, I'm so tired of it. It's like, come on.
It looks
not
nice.
that much difference between those versions.
Do you think we're tired of it? The people who've been into HDTV before video games are really sick of it. Are really sick of it because ABC and NBC and CBS still sitting around arguing about standards. It's old.
Yeah.
Ted, what did Resistance end up shipping in?
720p.
720, because 1080p was a target.
And it looks
you guys
perfectly
decided.
fine.
It looks perfect.
Yeah.
There's a sort of diminishing returns at some point, surely, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can choose to put the extra VRAM into 1080p or into assets, and we decided that it looked great at 720p. Let's go with it.
Yeah.
Great call.
Yeah.
We'll have more coming up in about 30 seconds. Following up on Resistance, we'll let Ted have a full string to go all about orientation of how it looks on the screen and what kind of assets they put into it, how they developed it, all that kind of stuff. In 30 seconds, we'll be right back.
You're listening to One Up Yours, part of the One Up Radio Network.
Hey, kids! Podcasts are here. You been hearing about podcasts? You like podcasts? You been reading about podcasts? Well, we got a podcast. Jeff, don't we got a podcast?
We do have a podcast.
CGW Radio.
CGWradio.oneup.com.
What's that? What are those URL things?
Podcast.oneup.com.
Whoa!
You can also get it at iTunes Music Store.
Whoa, wow!
Holy cow!
All right, we're back. And yesterday, we spent all day at Dogpatch Studios over in Proterra with Sony's Gamer Day. Leading up to the PS3 launch, they had tons of titles, tons of machines. They showed the box. Wow, that was exciting stuff, wasn't it?
Don't take pictures of it. You'll have plenty of chances to take pictures of the box later. That's what she said.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
Man, I'm telling you, he's totally... It's like he's like been in... It's like I just... Here, Luke, take my load and just go.
What the fuck? I'm done.
No, I meant take the load off my back. Jesus, you guys are bad.
Take my load and I'm done.
We've got Ted Price in the studio today.
Wow.
It's a good day to show up,
Mr.
I
Price
guess.
is shipping a game at PS3 launch.
Man, you guys have...
Change of subject.
Change of
subject.
Just Take my load.
What? So anyway.
That's what I told her.
Yeah.
So yesterday, up on the second floor, we were playing Resistance. Ted was demoing. You get two levels, right?
Yeah, we were showing off 2 that were playable for folks after the big presentation.
So take us through what you were showing yesterday and give us a little background on Resistance. Get us set up to talk about the game.
Well, I mean, hopefully you guys know what the game's all about. It's a alternate history game set in 1951 where you're playing the part of a ranger who is going to help the British resistance forces fight against a race called the Chimera. And yesterday what we were showing off was a level in Nottingham, England. And we've completely rearranged England in terms of what it looks like. And that level was something we wanted to show because it had a lot of Chimeran architecture in it. One of the criticisms that we got back as far as E3 this year was, hey, you guys look like just another World War II game. And we wanted to make it clear that as you go through the game, there is a ton of change occurring in the environment that really separates it from anything that we know of in our history. It's because the Chimera are such a big influence on the environment. So that was the background, and then it was an opportunity to show off some of the weapons that we've been working on and are now in the game, and some of the more exotic features of the weapons. Every weapon has multiple firing capabilities. So one of my favorites is the Hailstorm, which is this kind of massive Gatling gun. But the best part about the Hailstorm, in my opinion, is you can fire out this little turret which floats in the air and discharges the rest of your clip and auto-targets enemies that are running around. Really helpful when you're in a big crowd of creatures. And another weapon that I showed yesterday that got a good response was the Lark, which is a rocket launcher where you can pause rockets in the air and target them, move its targeting reticule around so you can pretty much guide it. And using the analog buttons, harder or softer you press, you can make it fly faster or slower. It's pretty cool. It also has alternate firing capabilities where it discharges little submunitions.
I watched you do some crazy stuff with the Lark. I mean, absolutely crazy. Like fire the rocket way up over into the sky above where like the mini boss was.
Yeah.
And then how are you making him come back down to him?
All you got to do is aim your reticule at the target, and then the rocket will rotate in the air and point.
Did you check that out, Luke?
No, I didn't get to see him demo it. I just got to play a ton of it.
I got to see that a couple months ago, and that was like one of the first things I came in.
Found
you.
Yeah.
I found you, and I remember the whole Nottingham levels when I kind of was like, okay, this is a really cool game, because I had seen E3, and then I came to your office like at the end of August, and I came back and told these guys, I'm like, you got to wait to see this level. This will kind of sell you on like this is a different type of game. It's just not.
And that was
another World War II game.
And it goes on from there. We got to be careful about not showing too much of the game.
Right.
So there's a lot more architecture and there are a lot more environments that are really varied that you uncover as you're moving through the game. But one of the cool things about the Lark is its use in multiplayer. A lot of these weapons show up in multiplayer, and so you can have a rocket hanging out, waiting for people to come through a choke point and just nail them with the rockets. Or you can have a couple guys in your team with Larks hanging out and waiting for.
So you can actually hold the rocket up in space.
Yeah, you can just have it just floating there, and it's like a laser guided missile. It's a lot of fun to use. The last thing I'll talk about when it comes to the weapons were the Reapers. They are dual pistols that you get to unlock in the game, and what's cool about them is you can target independently. So you have your reticle over one enemy, you start firing, and then you hold down your alternate fire, and you get a second reticule, which you can use to target another enemy who may be running in a completely different direction. And so you have your guns crossed or pointing in opposite directions.
Cool.
It's very neat, and it's really effective when you have large groups of characters or enemies that you're fighting against, which happens all the time in the game.
You guys have been testing a lot. That when you hear it, you're like, wow, that sounds really cool, but it could get a little overwhelming. How long does it take to get in the flow of targeting one guy, firing, pulling the alternate fire, targeting the next guy, and being able to fire at him at the same time?
Well, you have to play it to really answer that question. For me, my feeling is it's intuitive. We spent a lot of time tuning these weapons and trying them out to make sure that they weren't too hard to understand. We also have a pretty detailed help system in the game, so if you want to figure out how to use these weapons, you can just look at help in various places throughout the game.
Is that available in multiplayer too, the dual pistols?
The dual pistols are not.
Okay.
No. But that's sorry.
That's okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
Trying to plan your next multi-kill?
Yeah. I need a lot of help in the multi-kills.
We do have eight of the regular weapons in multiplayer, plus I think 3 grenade types as well. And that was something else I showed off yesterday. Was another one of our grenade types. But the key is that, and this is what I didn't get a chance to talk about yesterday, there's a lot of variety in the weapons, and from the very beginning we wanted to create layered combat strategy so that as you're going through the game, you have a chance to really, if you know your arsenal well, you have a chance to pull out the right weapon at the right time. And I'll give you an example. A lot of the times in the game you'll get pinned down by enemies who are just trying to kick your ass, who are firing constantly at your cover position. I find myself usually taking damage if I'm rolling out and trying to take them on head on. So what I'll use is the auger, which is a weapon that'll fire through walls. And usually I'll think, oh, wait a second, I've got the auger in my arsenal. I can just point at them through this wall and nail them. Or roll out, deploy an auger shield and shoot through the shield, which the shield protects me. So that's just one example of the kinds of things you can do. But we found now that as we're watching people play through the game, everybody uses all the weapons. People aren't just stuck with one weapon.
You have to. I mean, just going through the demo section, I was like, okay, I need this weapon for this guy. Okay, I need, like you're talking about the auger shield. The shield's really cool. The shield is like you pull the alternate fire and it throws up this temporary energy
almost,
field.
yeah.
And it's awesome because you can get stuck in spots where they kind of zerg at you. And if you have that, you can think, whoa, I don't have to hide. I can just jump out in front of them, toss a shield, and mow them down.
So did this stuff come? Did the weapon stuff come as at the beginning of the project, or did they come as, because you guys built a big reputation with weapons with the Ratchet and Clank series, and it's what you guys are known for?
Yeah.
So was it always the intention to take these sort of comic book fantasy weapons and bring them into something more sci-fi, or was it the game came first and then it was like, what we could do?
That's a good question. I think it kind of all evolved at the same time. And we had a lot of people contributing ideas throughout the entire project, and we knew from the beginning that we wanted to have really different weapons because in choosing an alternate history theme, we knew that the restrictions were lifted. We didn't have to stick to what really existed in 1950, or we didn't have to do World War II weapons. And so everybody started thinking about, hey, what would be cool and what would fit in this universe from the very beginning. And we tried out a lot. We tried out stuff that didn't work. I mean, we discarded weapons, but at the end, we ended up with a really solid group of weapons that were well tested, that fit together. That didn't repeat functionality between each weapon.
Now, talking about the story, that wasn't the direction you guys are going now. That wasn't the original plan for the game, correct?
No, we were doing something completely different.
It was very different, right? Yeah. That's right.
It was much more of a sci-fi space opera.
That's right.
Really?
Originally, yeah. It was a big story as well, but it was just not set on Earth, and it involved traveling between time zones and all sorts of crazy stuff. And then we realized that it was going to be so hard to ground the player in this reality that we needed to bring it back to Earth, to be kind of cheesy there for a second, but we needed to ground it in a little bit of reality. So that's when we started thinking about this, setting it in a historical period on Earth, something that people were familiar with, but then adding a big twist to it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun. I think when we hit that realization during the project, that's when everybody just kind of turned on and said, okay, wait, that's it. And I think for every project, there's that point where people just jump on board and they can see it in their heads. And that was the point where I think most people on the project said, okay, we get it.
We're going to talk about game development theory in a minute, then maybe we'll talk about that some more. But I'm curious, talking about that, how did you go from working on Ratchet and Clank stuff? Where was the genesis of Resistance, and how did it start into the path of space opera before it moved on down to Earth?
Well, the genesis was knowing that we were going to do a PlayStation 3 launch title, and knowing that we needed to do a game that was attractive to the hardcore audience, who would be typically the early adopters for the PlayStation 3. And we knew that a platformer probably wouldn't cut it. Now, a lot of us love first-person shooters. The first game we did was a first-person shooter. Disruptor. And we wanted to go back to our roots and do this again. We also wanted to take advantage of what we knew the PlayStation 3 would be able to do, which was put a lot of enemies on screen. So the first idea was kind of a Starship Troopers type game where we wanted to have hordes of enemies coming at you on different planets, and that was the genesis right there. And the challenge for us was making the switch from a very cartoony style on Ratchet and the kind of goofiness to a much more serious, dark story. And it took us a while to actually make that transition. And as I said, it kind of didn't click until we hit that kind of second story set of ideas.
People are going to reach their own conclusions, obviously, from playing the game. But what sort of inspirations were you guys drawing on while you were working on it?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think that we have so many people we've had so many people on the project throughout who have been actively involved in creating the story and the weapons and the characters. Everything from movies to science fiction books, to science fiction series, to other games, to just pure imagination. there wasn't. I can't say that there was one particular inspiration when it came to this game. And I think if you look at the characters and you look at the backgrounds, it does have a unique flavor, and that's more from a lot of people contributing to the game than it is saying that we relied on a particular movie or a particular other game.
To sort of piggyback on the back end of that question, inevitably Resistance is a shooter, and it's going to draw comparisons within the genre. What do you think is an appropriate comparison, game-wise, that people are going to be familiar with, versus an inappropriate comparison that Resistance is going to draw? I mean, being a shooter, people are going to say, "Is it the next?" What do you want? What do you want to be compared to, and what don't you want to be compared to?
Well, I think it's inevitable that you do. First of all, it's flattering if we get compared to some of the big first-person shooters that we've all been playing over the years. I think that every game in every genre these days can kind of point to other big, giants in the genres that it is on whose shoulders they stood. And I'm going to take a quick diversion before I answer your question. Ratchet, for example. Ratchet, I think, owes a lot to Metroid. And maybe some guys on the team wouldn't agree with that, but I think it owes a lot to that particular series because a lot of us had played those games when we grew up. And for me, that was a real favorite. And it was all about weapons and that type of progression showed up in Ratchet. But Ratchet also owed a lot to Zelda in terms of its kind of adventure theory, which we tried to incorporate, and some of its kind of RPG aspects that also showed up in games like Zelda but weren't overt. That's the kind of stuff that showed up there. Resistance is kind of the same way, where we looked at a lot of other games, we played a lot of other games for many years and kind of absorbed the lessons from those games, and it just kind of comes out naturally in what we do when we make these games. So I can't. It's really hard.
So you don't want to be compared to Area 51.
Yeah.
Or PDZ. or definitely doesn't want to be the PDZ.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys hear us being compared to?
COD3 meets Aliens is the one.
Yeah, we were at, the reason I wasn't on the show last week, I was
or something, Yeah. That's what I started my preview off, is everybody's saying it's this or that, and
and I still get some Killzone feel from it. I think that's from the coloring. I mean, from what we've shown so far.
That's exactly what you said, what you've shown so far.
I was at Digital Life last week, and I think that was the first time it had been shown in public, right? Out in New York.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of the feedback from people we were hanging around with that were playing it, it was like, it was very sort of, the Call of Duty came up a lot as a comparison. And I think that's because some of those huge open areas, like I think it's in London, where there's the crumbling buildings and there's that big open area in the middle with the barricades.
E3
That's
level,
Manchester.
Right?
Yeah.
Manchester has a very sort of... There's areas in Call of Duty like that where it's just like things swarming in at one end and you're holed up in the corner. And
yeah, that's a really good point. What happens is when you show little bits and pieces of the game, people will automatically assume that the rest of the game is just like that. Mm-hmm. But we made a big effort to vary the gameplay. So Manchester is a good example of one of our Battlefield segments where you're with a lot of allies, you're fighting against a lot of enemies, but there are plenty of other levels where you're on your own or with a small group of guys, and that feels completely different. It means that the game kind of takes the player on a journey in terms of different types of gameplay, and that's easy. It's easy to see why people would compare us to Call of Duty there. But then again, if they were playing these other levels, they might compare us to some other first-person shooter. Ultimately, when they get a chance to play the whole game, I think it does become something that's unique.
Well, I was going to ask, do you think, going back, hindsight's 2020, but you would have in the first E3 showing would have been the Nottingham level instead of something that looked kind of Call of Duty-ish?
Well, yeah, at the point, I think every developer goes through this this conundrum. You show what is the best at the time.
Yeah.
And the reason we chose Manchester initially was because we wanted to get the basics down, right? We wanted to make sure that we could do a believable human environment first. And then we began creating more of the Chimera architecture, which is why we showed that yesterday.
Yeah.
Talk about the level design some, and in the context of the first-person shooter, especially the AAA first-person shooter, is all about now what kind of epic moments are you going to create? The take-home pieces that people are going to have. How do you guys approach that? How much of it do you look at, how much do I have to script? How much can I leave to AI? How much do I want to control the experience? Those trade-offs.
There are definitely moments throughout the game that are scripted where we try to scare the hell out of the player with big events. And you'll see those, I can't even tell you how many times you see it in the game, but they were memorable. But there are also there's also a lot of innate behavior going on where, for example, the hybrids, which are one of the more frequent characters you encounter in the game.
Which one are they?
There are several flavors of them. They're the guys who have the bullseye, the weapon that fires the red projectiles.
Cool.
And there's several variations of those in the game. But they're the ones who tend to be the foot soldiers. And they do all sorts of stuff. And one of the things that happens frequently is that you'll be hiding behind cover, and one will just charge around cover at you, and you don't expect it. And it doesn't happen the same way every time. Next time you play through that level, you may have a guy throwing a grenade at you. You may have guys retreating to take their own cover, etc. So we spend a lot of time making sure that the characters just in regular gameplay would surprise you. They're not scripted unless we want them to enter the scene in a specific way to create more of a scene.
I guess, and kind of building off of that, you said there's going to be some parts where it's much more like intimate encounters.
Yeah.
How did you balance that out? Like, I'm really into the pacing of the game. How did you figure your pacing, and what are you looking for as far as that?
We talked a lot about pacing when we were designing the game, and it was important for us not to be hitting the player in the face with heavy combat over and over and over again, because then it becomes a little bit it gets old fast, and you get numb to the combat. And so what was important for us was to have big, bombastic combat and then a quiet area. And then maybe we'd scare the player with an ambush, or the player gets to deal with something completely different that they haven't seen before, a brand new enemy, or pick up a new weapon. So we tried to keep things, again, as I said before, varied. We realized through our early tests that it was easy to create a game where it was just shoot,
right.
Face 20 enemies, face 20 enemies, face 20 enemies.
Have you played? I hate to draw back to the reference game, but have you played any games? Like, for me, a game that did that really well was Black. I don't know if you guys have checked that out at all.
I played Black.
So did you kind of get that same feel from that, or
the 20 guys, or
the pacing of the pacing part?
I thought that Black was paced okay. I thought it was actually kind of underrated. It was decent as far as. I don't know how we're trying to compare it to Resistance or what.
I'm just talking about the pacing part, because I think that pacing plays a huge part in how well a first-person shooter works. Because if you lose the connection into the game world, then it's very hard to get it back.
Something else that's important, though, when you talk about pacing, is story.
Yeah.
Throughout the game, the gameplay is punctuated by movies and other story elements that help explain what's going on, and so the player feels a lot more connected to the world. I think if you have a game which is light on story, then you don't really, you don't understand what you're doing, you don't understand what your mission is, and you don't connect with the world.
I think that's what Halo and Half-Life 2 do really well.
Half-Life 2 especially. Yeah. Are you guys doing video, or is it all in-game? How do you balance that out?
Most of the sequences are non-interactive scenes, but we certainly have interactive scenes. The interactive scenes you might miss because they happen in real time, special sequences. But the non-interactive scenes are definitely told differently than your standard game movies. The protagonist in the game is not the narrator. You're not telling the story. It's a story being told about you over 3 days of the main character's life, and it talks about what happens to you and kind of the mystery surrounding your existence, I suppose.
Without blowing too much story.
But we also incorporate a lot of different visual elements. It's all about recon photos, maps, that kind of thing. It's not just straight up FMV, because we realized, too, that gets old. We wanted to keep things different, keep things fresh for the player as they move to each chapter of the game.
Now, in keeping things fresh, is that part of keeping some Chimera have pants on and some don't have pants on? I've been asked by. Asked. I was told to ask you from one of your employees to ask why some of the Chimera have pants on and some don't have.
Are they hot pants?
Yeah. Well, no pink pants, no pink hot pants. So we had a massive debate over pants or no pants for the hybrids. One of our main enemies, probably 8 months ago during production, maybe a little bit longer. This is back when we were coming up with the character designs, actually much longer than 8 months ago. And I remember all of us on the team sitting in a big conference room looking at the first sketches of some of the Chimera, and somebody saying, why do they have to have pants? And I said, well, we need pants. Because, come on, they need pants. And then the debate raged on. It was pretty evenly split. So what ended up happening is some of our Chimera have pants, some don't. And There's also been a big debate on the genitalia.
I knew this was going there. I was glad I didn't
I
say
was
it
hoping it
first.
would
Yes.
segue right into that. I didn't even have to ask it.
or the lack of genitalia.
Are the taller ones, do they have bigger ones?
All right,
It's
so
an
let's
M-rated game, but not an AL-rated game. Sorry.
get away from that. Before we start talking about bigger picture stuff, Luke, you spent the most time with the game yesterday.
Yeah.
What did you take away from it? How did you feel about, like, as now we've talked about characters, weapons, pacing, all that kind of stuff?
Luke, what did you tell me, Luke, after you played it?
I said you were right.
Thank you.
Because Brian came back from seeing the game and was like, "Dude, you're gonna love Resistance when you finally get to when you get to play a later build. You're gonna love what you're gonna play." And I perpetually the skeptic. I was like, "Yeah, whatever." Call of Duty meets Aliens. And after playing it yesterday, like all the stuff we're talking about, like the weapons and the way that the weapons work. I was talking with Ryan O'Donnell last night about it. Like the sniper rifle, that the alt fire slows time.
Love it.
It just I love that because it makes sniping all of a sudden so rewarding. And even not using the alt fire, just using the regular fire. The guy was watching me play and was like, "Did you test this game?" Because it was just headshot. And the actual the alien environment, the architecture looked really cool. I played through the whole demo, both levels, and the big circular level, like the circular courtyard with the giant Zerg of enemies coming, throwing up the auger shield, like using all the different weapons. Like Garnet was right. Like there are different times, and once you get used to either R2, like mashing on R2 to fast cycle through the weapons, or holding it and stopping time and switching to weapons, like it becomes very natural going through like this big list of 5 weapons that you have. Or I think at that part it was 4.
Yeah, you were playing with less than half of the weapons in the game, so you definitely unlock a lot more or find a lot more as you're moving through the game. And there are more unlockables that I can't talk about yet, but yeah, there are a lot of weapons that you can play with.
Tell me we're going to get to ultimately fight those things hanging in the sky with the...
Oh, the big jellyfish?
Yeah, those are awesome. Tell me we get to fight those.
Well, those guys are not aggressive, so they're not going to do any damage to you. So.
Denied.
Yeah,
Denied.
Sorry. But there are plenty of other Chimera that you do see later in the game that we have not shown yet.
So it sounds like we're all very high on it. You guys have done a great job working on PlayStation 3. What's it been like designing and developing on the hardware?
It has been a great learning experience for us. I mean, that we've been working on PlayStation hardware now for must be 10 years.
Yeah.
And more than that. Shoot, it's been like 12 years or so, ever since it came out. And for us, it was a more natural transition to PlayStation 3 because we're familiar with the way Sony makes their stuff. But it was a significant transition because we're going to really parallel processing now versus what was more like a linear processing before. So our engine team spent a lot of time getting up to speed on the SPUs and making sure that our engine was designed for the cell. And I think as we went through development, we found that we could do more and more and more by using the SPUs. And every time we transferred over another process to run in parallel on the SPUs, we unlocked more abilities within the game. But it's certainly been a challenge. I mean, I think whether you're doing a launch title or doing a title that's 5 years into the console's life cycle, making games is always going to be a challenge because I think developers in general want to push the envelope and show something new that consumers haven't seen before. And so, I don't care if it's PlayStation 1, Xbox, PlayStation 3, people are always busting their asses and working very hard to make these works of art. That's probably not what you wanted to hear.
Well, I mean, you kind of...
I like that he looked at Luke when he said that. He looked right at Luke when he said that.
You admitted that it was a challenge. You just didn't say it was any more challenging than anything else.
So. It wasn't. I mean, here's the challenge doesn't necessarily come with the hardware. It comes with the systems that you're creating to deal with the much more assets that go into the game. I mean, when you're talking next gen here, you're talking about stuff that has significantly more polygons in it. You're talking about a lot more maps per character. You're talking about techniques that weren't possible on previous generations of hardware. All of these things take a lot of time to develop, but unfortunately, we have a limited amount of time to create them before the games have to come out. So everybody's busting their asses to get it right. And it's usually new territory for us. So that's what's kind of scary and exhilarating about being on new hardware.
People like to ask questions like, so how much percentage of the
I was
of the
waiting
system?
for that one.
Yeah, so, but without getting crazy about numbers, I mean, how much of this system do you think you guys are using and how much more is there over the top of it?
I've said a lot. I've said pretty frequently that I still think we're scratching the surface of what PlayStation 3 can do. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a great thing because it means that the games that you're going to see in the years to come are going to be bigger and better and show off more stuff. I mean, a good example is use of 1080p. You're going to see more and more games coming out in 1080p and more games coming out at higher frame rates as people get a grasp on working with the PlayStation 3. And that's a really cool thing. You're going to see many more characters being supported. You're going to see more and more brilliant environments. I mean, but the cool thing is right now at launch, there are already games that look absolutely amazing. And so from a consumer's perspective, that's a very good thing.
So you said you knew that it was always going to be a launch game. When did the pressure pile on for you guys? Because it seems like a couple of months ago, all of a sudden everyone was saying, okay, the game you're going to have to get with the PS3 is Resistance. And it suddenly became clear that it was the one that the spotlight was on. Was that something that was always part of, I mean, was that part of the plan with Sony that they wanted a big showcase game, or did that come about just sort of naturally? Because now it's like the big game they're promoting at retail really aggressively, and is that a fairly recent thing?
I think it's been having the right game at the right time, really. I don't think we or Sony were saying, oh yeah, this has got to be the flagship title. Obviously, we wanted it to be a very big game, but there was never any pressure from Sony to make the game to end all games. That just wasn't it. I think we have always had the philosophy that we do the best thing, to make the best games we possibly can. And whether it's a launch title or not a launch title, we're going to work just as hard. It was really, but ironically, you say that it seems like all the attention started showing up about 6 months ago. For us, the real pressure that we started putting on ourselves occurred about a year ago, where we were starting to really get the game levels up and running and starting to get the systems working and thinking, okay, now we have this much time left before we have to come out. Mapping it out, looks scary. We had a lot left to do. Over the last 6 months, we knew we were there. We knew that the game was going to be done in time, and so it wasn't as scary as it was earlier. And I think most consumers don't realize that. Game developers, by the time the game comes out, we're already onto something else usually, and it's a different kind of pressure cycle.
I'm glad that you said that you wanted it to be a really big game, because it sort of leads into a question about how concerned are you that Resistance might not be as big of a game as it deserves to be because of simple hardware shortages. By the time there are enough retail units in the channel for Resistance to be a big seller, you're going to start seeing the emergence of second-gen PS3 games that could overshadow a game like Resistance. And so that ultimately is sort of doing a disservice to you guys, because you guys have busted your ass to make this game meet launch, and you're only meeting launch with 400,000 units in the first month, maybe 1 million by the end of the year, although Sony's saying now that Jack Tretton's like, we don't even know if we're going to meet that. It's not necessarily putting your game in the best position to succeed financially. What's going to determine for you guys success if it's not going to be selling 4 million units?
Well, for us, with every game that we make, we don't make single games. We look at it as a franchise. And if Resistance becomes kind of ensconced in the gamer's conscience as one of those great games you have to get, even if there aren't that many pieces of hardware out now, when we continue the franchise, there will be a lot of games out there. And our goal from the very beginning was to make this a chapter in a much bigger story.
So is it a continuing the franchise challenge, or is it giving this one, or is there pressure to give this one a big window of opportunity?
Well, I think there will be a big window. I mean, we have to keep in mind that this is not just about America either. Mm-hmm. This game is coming out in Japan, it's coming out in Europe next year, and at that point, next year, 5 million or so units, that's a lot of units to sell to. And we're also very fortunate, I think, that there aren't that many competitors in this category right now for first-person shooters. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 6 months? But Resistance has gotten a lot of attention, and I think that word of mouth, if people like what they see when they're playing, word of mouth will help keep this game in people's minds over the next year. Something else that we're also very excited about in terms of longevity for this game is online. I mean, we've got a big online game with Resistance. I mean, 6 modes, all of which offer 40-player play, a lot of customization available online. I mean, there are things that are going to keep this game alive, I think, far beyond the initial excitement.
What has to happen for a 40-player game? First of all, I just got to jump in there for a second.
Actually, before that, why 40? It seems...
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, was that the sort of optimum
originally
point?
It was originally 32, right? At E3 it was 32, and then you bumped it up to 40.
We like to work in 8s, Something to do with programming. I ask our programmers. We definitely, at E3, realized that we could bump up the numbers, and we thought, let's go for it. Let's try 40. we probably could have gone even higher, but 40 was a safe number. And now we are running at 40 without lag, and
that's not with a dedicated server. That's just with everyone peer-to-peering.
No. It's with Sony's dedicated servers.
Oh, okay.
So people are running off of Sony servers.
Oh, okay. That explains a big part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, I don't know if you guys got the chance to play multiplayer.
I have not had a chance to play multiplayer.
But I played multiplayer a couple months ago, and it, even a couple months ago, was running.
That's awesome.
Really well, 40. And it was like, because we were playing people at Sony and at Insomniac, and it was... And
John talked about
pretty cool.
John talked about the pressure of a launch game, and what's interesting to me is I think if you had told someone just out of the blue a few years ago, "Hey, Insomniac's going to have a launch PS3 game," everyone would have said, "Oh, okay, naturally it'll be Ratchet and Clank, right?" What has to come together for a new IP? And not only, I mean, you guys that's an amazing situation in today's development climate. New IP, launch title, big budget, looking to be a franchise.
That's where the challenge exists. The kind of the intersection of those three challenges right there.
How did you guys get to do that?
We went to Sony early and said, here's a proposal for a game that that we'd like to do on the PlayStation 3. And our relationship with Sony is very good. We're an independent company. Sony doesn't own us. I think people assume that Sony owns us, which is very funny. But we've always had a good relationship with them. It's been 10 years that we've been working together now. And it's easy for us to discuss what we want to do, what our vision is for the next game, and get feedback from Sony. And it becomes a very collaborative process in terms of they're supporting us with production support, testing support, marketing, distribution, etc., and we're making the game. And there's not a whole lot of interference at all. We don't have somebody coming down and saying, you must make the game this way. We go for it. And we rely on Sony to give us feedback about whether or not what we're doing is going to be attractive to consumers.
What can developers who maybe aren't as positioned as Insomniac do to be able to have that, to get there? What do they need to be doing?
I think reputation means everything. If you can develop a game that maybe it's not a commercial success, but a critical success because it had great game design and great artistic design and great programming, then you can build up a portfolio of solid games. You find the right publisher who appreciates the quality, maybe not the commercial success, but the quality, then you have your reputation that will take you a lot further when you're making pitches to publishers, and there's more trust from the publisher side. And you got to remember, I mean, publishers are putting a lot of money behind these games. It's a huge risk. And so who are you going to trust? The guys who have focused on making kind of lower level titles, or people who have just kind of put their all into these games, whether or not they sold well. I think that we are very fortunate. Having a long-term relationship with a publisher is something that's rare in this industry, and not to sound like a Sony fanboy, because I know I get skewered for this on the
I've already got the prod lined up.
But we've worked with the same group of people for 10 years, and that's what it comes down to, is if you trust the people you work with and you have a good relationship with them, it makes everything easy.
What would it take for Insomniac to develop a game for another platform holder? You just said you're independent.
Yeah. I mean, that's always a choice we have.
Inconceivable amounts of cash?
It's not about the money. I know it sounds, again, I'll probably get skewered for this on the boards, but it's not.
At least you know that.
Yeah, I do. They got some harsh critics out there. But for all of us, it's always been about the creative freedom that we have to make these games. As I said, when we propose games, there are ideas. We're the ones who are creating the rules for the game, and we're not getting any pressure from Sony to do a specific type of game or to make our game one way or another. And that's what is important to all the guys at Insomniac. Selling a lot of games and being able to make good money and pay good bonuses and have great benefits for everybody, that's important too in this industry, because there is a lot of competition among developers and publishers for good talent.
And you guys are going to have more, Ice Cream Sunday days. That's what I was down there. It was Ice Cream Sunday day at Insomniac, so, obviously it has to go there.
Well, the people work really hard at Insomniac, and we do the best we can to make sure that they have great perks along the way.
I want to jump back a couple conversation threads ago to talk a little bit more about online, because I know that people on the message boards want to know more about the online functionality, and we talked a little bit last night over drinks that you guys created your own online infrastructure. You're not using one of these third-party middleware solutions that's been offered up like GameSpire, Xfire. This is your own in-house developed system that incorporates a matchmaking type system. So what do you guys look at as the sort of standard in online functionality in the console space? What about constructing your own matchmaking system? What are you borrowing from? What are you bringing new to a matchmaking formula? And really, for players who are going to be logging on to play Resistance on day one, what are they going to be getting out of that online experience? Describe what they're going to be going through.
Well, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a choice between playing ranked or unranked games. And if you play a ranked game, it's going to take your rating into account. Now, if you're logging on for the first time, you won't have a rating. But your rating is created from your success or lack of success during your online games. Let's say you join a week after the launch of the PlayStation 3, and there already have been players who are playing. You won't be matched up with people who are experts. That's the whole point of matchmaking. You're going to be put with people who have the same basic rating you do, so you don't get slaughtered when you go into online matches. That's the key to matchmaking, and we use a lot of algorithms to make sure that we're matching up people correctly. And in terms of, to answer your first question is, where do we come up with that technology? I think we have an extremely talented multiplayer programming group. Those guys have been working for a long time on not just Resistance, but they've been working on the Ratchet games as well, and have learned quite a bit about building online systems from the ground up. And I think
which didn't get played a lot, but had a really cool multiplayer last time.
Yeah,
really cool multiplayer.
The two games ago had really cool multiplayer. It was really the first game
with the little robots you could get around.
Awesome.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, they blast with that.
And you know what was it's a little frustrating for us because our goal was to make a platformer, the first real online platformer, and as you said, it was really good, and we still have a lot of diehard fans who play. But that's not the kind of game that gains the kind of the attention from the online community. Finally, we had a chance to do it, kind of merge our online group's passion and talent with a game that garners online attention from the online community with Resistance. And I got to tell you, we are so stoked for day one to see people getting online and playing and listening to what they have to say about the game. Though back to your other question, the other opportunity if you get online day one is to play unranked games. If you're the kind of player who doesn't like kind of the heavy competition, you can create custom games and invite your friends to play private games or set up parties where you don't have to worry about somebody else coming in who you don't know. There are a ton of options for you.
That's what we'll do at Zift probably. It's just playing private games.
So what is it that makes the 40 player possible? Is it the PS3? Because there's a lot of shit flying around in that game.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff moving over the servers. So is it the PS3? Is it the fact that your multiplayer coders are great, or it seems like a big even the 360. You get 16 players in a game, and it can be a dog.
It is both. It is the what we get from the SPUs, because we do put a lot of our processes on the SPUs, which means that any multiplayer game where you have a lot of stuff going on, you're processing a lot locally, right? Before you're even worried about the bandwidth, you're doing a lot on the machine. PlayStation 3 lets us do that. We also have an extremely talented group of multiplayer programmers, and I keep on giving them props, but it's true. They figured out how to compress that information well, and the information you need to send across the DSL lines or cable lines, and make it work efficiently. Because you can be inefficient about what you're sending to the server and getting back from the server, and that's going to slow things down. These guys know exactly what to send and what not to send.
And having dedicated servers in the first place is huge.
That's what I was going to say.
That's huge.
Do you guys get the dedicated servers because you're working with Sony sort of in a second party type relationship, whereas other flat out third party support, will third party games be seeing dedicated servers too? Do you know?
I don't know, but I think that what Sony did with the PlayStation 2 is, and I think that's going to continue with the PlayStation 3, is they give publishers and developers the option to do their own thing. There are no restrictions on what you can and can't do. So if you're publisher X, you set up your own servers and let people play your games through it, and they don't have to charge. Nobody charges a fee. It's all free.
So we've argued about that with Live, and I think one of the places if Live is going to compete, it has to move to is stop making games have to be peer-to-peer, and have Microsoft offer some hosted, dedicated servers so that they can have that same sort of thing. If you look at first-person shooters back through PC days, if you're peer-to-peer, you're very limited on how many people you can have. If you go dedicated server, boom, the door's open.
Yeah.
And that's a huge difference, a great advantage that you guys have.
Well, Microsoft sort of had that with Rainbow Six 3. You could actually dedicate your box while you're playing if you weren't going to play.
But I'm going to guess that the dedicated servers aren't necessarily running on PS3 hardware. They're probably running on some sort of Linux box, right?
Couldn't tell you.
Right. So they're probably running on some kind of intense hardware.
Intense.
With
a capital I.
That was intense.
Intense. Luke, you got follow-ups? We should take this thing to the house. We've been going for forever. Ted, awesome guest, man.
Yeah,
by the way.
Sorry for babbling so much.
We could do this forever.
Yeah, I can sit here and keep talking.
Yeah.
I guess sort of a succinct way to wrap it up, to sort of tie everything together, is Jamie Greisemer, who's one of the lead designers on Halo, has this very popular 30 seconds of fun. Is sort of like his design theory with creating a shooter. If you're creating 30 seconds of fun and getting people to go back through and finding new ways to sort of incorporate that 30 seconds of fun throughout the game. Succinctly, how do you set out to make a shooter?
I think that, well, first of all, it's not me personally. I mean, there are a lot of people who contribute to the design, and I got to say that Insomniac is a place where it is all about collaboration. There's not one person who's saying the game must be this way. But I think our collective philosophy has always been give the player a lot of options. If you give them weapons, for example, that have multiple functionality, a lot of functionality, and give them weapons that are differentiated, and you give them a lot of characters that have different types of AI, all of a sudden you create this evolving palette for gameplay that changes every time you run through the game. Nobody wants to, for example, go through the game, die once, and then play the exact same scenario each time. You want enemies that are going to evolve in terms of their AI. You want weapons that can be used in different situations. And that's the philosophy we brought forward from Ratchet. And I think it applies just as well to Resistance. Keep people, on their toes and let them experiment.
So you want to hang out for news? Because I'm sure we can ask a few more questions out of the news
and
stuff.
I'm pretty sure, speaking of keeping people on their toes, that you'll be keeping them on their toes in the news section, right?
Yeah, I absolutely plan on keeping people on their toes, and we'll have Ted participate.
All right, we'll be back in a minute.
Want to know what's new now? Then join Jim Louderback and Patrick Norton as they tackle the latest technology news. They'll keep you informed with their weekly What's New Now podcast. Just go to what'snewnow.com and subscribe, or subscribe through iTunes.
Want more Extreme Tech? Well, now you can join the crew of expert analysts for a weekly podcast. They'll give you the lowdown on the latest technology news, product reviews, and let you know what's coming up. Just go to extremetech.com to subscribe.
You're listening to One Up Yours on the One Up Radio Network.
All right, we're here for news, and we appreciate you sticking around. Know it's been a long cast, and we're probably still going to have a little while to roll out. We still have Ted with us. Luke has more than enough to, there's no way we're going to cut it down.
We're going whole hog.
Yeah, there's no way we're going to cut this one down. So I know there's something kind of dear to your heart that's come up at the last minute here.
Yeah, I saw it this morning before I came into work that Fox and Universal have allegedly pulled the plug on the Halo movie.
Tier.
Yeah, they said that development costs were too high to trust a first-time director like Neil Blomkamp, and that's it.
But what about, Peter Jackson? He apparently knows what he's doing,
Peter
right?
Jackson, I was thinking about it on my way in, actually. Peter Jackson might have to now sort of take it up on his own and finance the project like George Lucas did.
Yeah.
And if that takes off, then Peter Jackson could be even richer, in theory. And the other thing, and I'm treating that as rumor because it's not confirmed, and because I'm secretly hoping that it's,
I better say, that's a lot. That's some wishful thinking.
But no,
I think it'll still be made.
I think it'll still be made.
I think someone will still make it at some point.
Do you think this is a power play to get a different director in there?
It could be, yeah.
Maybe,
But will Peter Jackson fold under the pressure?
No, he won't. No, he won't.
The other bit of rumor-like news was apparently there was a Korean Exo-6, which I didn't go to. Thank God. But Destructoid reported that there's a 100 gig HDD coming out that Microsoft's making, which would ease those I only have 4 gigabytes on my hard drive situations left. But you were just saying the 20 gig hard drive, Brian, is what, $100?
$100? So what's this one going to cost? $1,000 or
$500? Bohica.
I mean, they say PS3 is expensive. You upgrade your 360, you're kind of screwed.
And you joked at the break. How many points is that going to cost on the marketplace?
Oh, I don't know. It's like probably, about 50,000 or something?
That transitions very nicely.
That was one thing, seeing the PS3
He's breaking
stuff
your
yesterday.
transition.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah, you're breaking it.
But the thing is,
we can run
seeing
that
the
joke
PS3
again.
online, it has actual dollar amounts, was nice because I'm kind of tired of thinking about, okay, how many points is equal to $10 or what is this equal to? It's kind of
we talked about that bit on the One Up show as well. It's only a little thing, but it is a big deal.
Yeah. Sorry, Luke.
50. That's okay. I'm going back to it.
50,000 points.
That'd be.
We'll probably be corrected on the boards for that.
What is 2,500 cheat codes in EA?
You'd be able to beat the crap out of Tiger Woods, definitely.
You will actually turn into him. for
that many points?
For that many points, you become Tiger.
Or you could just play through the game and get all that for free.
But this is
buy the PS2 version and just use the code.
I don't even want to talk about
No,
that.
we're talking about it. Because we've got Ted here, and Ted's excited about microtransactions.
I'm so angered by the fact they're charging for cheat codes.
So they're charging
I
for
thought
cheat
this
codes.
whole thing with buying stadiums was ridiculous, which in multiplayer map makes sense. In football game,
come on, you want to ruin the game? We'll charge you an extra couple of bucks for it.
I mean, remember with the days when this was all included in the game, and now
it still is.
It still is. You just have to pay to unlock it.
Like I said, EA, if it's in the game, now you're just paying a little extra for it.
$60 isn't enough for a game.
If it's in the game, it's still in the game. We just charge you more.
If it's in the game, just a couple extra bucks and you'll have it all.
EA Sports.
Yeah, it's a couple dollars more.
Yeah.
So, Ted, how do you feel about microtransactions?
Wow. Okay. Well,
so, you guys going to be selling guns that only certain people can use in multiplayer, Ted?
No.
Good answer.
I think that what's cool about microtransactions is if you do make a big game, it's a great way to extend the life of the game without forcing people to buy another big game. So one of the challenges that developers have is that the life cycle for a game is usually pretty short. I mean, you're talking about a bell curve of about 6 months, right? And if you can continue to put stuff out there that is relatively cheap, you can keep excitement high and give players kind of new chapters in the story, new maps, whatever it happens to be. I think it's a great opportunity.
Do you see anyone that's been doing it well yet?
I think it's still new. I think it's still too new. I think that what you're going to see in the next 3 years is people taking very different approaches to it, whether it is something like what EA is doing or...
How do you feel about that? You think that's a good idea?
What EA is doing? I don't even know that much about what EA is doing. I'm just kind of picking it up as you're...
Brian?
Cheat codes. Charging for cheat codes.
Yeah, charging for cheat codes, charging for jerseys.
Actually, I found out they're not charging for jerseys, but they're charging for the stadiums.
It depends on what people want to buy. I think everybody's going to find out.
If you buy those things, you're a bigger idiot than... oh, God.
There may be a lot of people out there who want it. I don't know.
So, Ted, while we get upset, I think one of the reasons you find us getting emotional about it is we've been talking about microtransactions for a long time. When we were first talking about this a year ago, everyone sitting here was excited about it like you were. Like you're talking about it like, wow, this is cool. We'll be able to buy a game, and then with, the appropriate use of microtransactions, we'll be able to extend our game, have fun with it, and not have a big investment. The worms turned because it's become, I'm going to nickel and dime you to death.
Okay, but I think, that may be the case for some games, but I think that what we're ignoring is some of the stuff that was shown yesterday. For example, some of the small downloadable games that you can get for presumably a couple bucks, that's cool. Because,
that is cool.
Because as a player, you get these bite-sized experiences that you're not going to spend 20 hours on, but you get it for a couple bucks. That's great. And plus episodic content, like what you saw with Half-Life, right? What they're doing, what Sin's doing. That kind of stuff is great for players.
Is Sony providing any guidelines for that? Because Microsoft seems to be having this, you guys go out there, throw whatever you want, see what the public tolerance is for these things. I mean, is there, on the Sony side, I know they're saying everything is open, but are they providing guidance on, okay, if you're going to do add-on contents, here is, for add-ons, this price range, and for extra episodes, this price range? And
No, I think... I know as much as you do. So anything I would say right now is a complete guess. But based on what was presented yesterday, it sounds like everybody's going to be able to make up their own rules. It's not. I don't think Sony's coming in and acting like the dictator. Luke is looking skeptical here, but
I just think it's a problem is, like you, Garnet, said, it's the appropriateness of what you're charging for. Like multiplayer maps, it changes the way you play the game. That's appropriate for charging for money.
Not if they're just colored maps, Ubisoft.
Well, what? It's like that's what bothers me.
But I think the consumers are going to mold how this works, because hopefully when stuff doesn't sell, people are going to stop making it. Right?
That's what I'm saying, though.
Stadiums, please.
The consumer as guinea pig, I really feel like I'm suffering because of the consumer being treated like the guinea pig, because there's so many idiots buying stupid shit on the marketplace that it just keeps proliferating. And that's why I've said continuously, stop buying things on the marketplace.
Thank you.
Like, do not participate in this beta test. This is absurd. That every time you buy a theme or a picture pack, what you're doing is you're saying like, this is okay, rape please here, and that's what you're doing. That's all that you're doing. So stop, cut the shit. Don't do not buy Lumines on Xbox Live. Fucking do not. This is a screenshot from the game. Ready? Congratulations on completing Versus CPU mode. Full 10 stages of Versus CPU mode can be played after purchasing both the base pack and the Versus CPU pack. The Versus CPU pack is coming soon on Xbox Live Marketplace. Fuck off. Do not participate in these fucking science projects on your wallet. It's absurd.
That's brilliant.
Did you buy it?
Fuck no. Are you kidding? I wouldn't have. But the thing is, with Lumines, I wouldn't have bought that game anyway because I bought it already on my PSP. I don't care. Like, I don't care to have it on home console on the 360's D-pad. What's okay about the Lumines transaction is it's an a la carte style system where
that's okay.
It's okay if you designate that it's okay, that you designate that it's an a la carte style system. Microsoft and Q Entertainment didn't present it this way at all from Go. From Go, it was Lumines Live. It's not like Lumines Live the Tard Pack, which is what this is. And then if you want the added functionality,
I'm not so sure it's
stuff.
okay to a la carte a game of this size because it's not like this. It's not like this expansive game that's going to be worth $35, $45,
it's not
$50
like a Sin episode or something like that. Where like, yeah, it's not.
And
like
even
a real,
Sin
full
episode
game.
is just one $14.99 crack. This is like, what is it up to already before you buy that? $25?
If you buy just this and the advanced pack, you're at $22.49. The advanced pack's not even out yet.
And
but
so
if you buy both, you're at $23. And there's 2 more packs already known that exist, which puts you at $37.49 for this game.
Hello, I can go buy for $29.99 Lumines 2, the sequel, not the rehash, but the sequel on my PSP. So that's why we get excited about it. That's where it's being blown. Because I see a game like Jaffe's game yesterday, which I was like, wow, this is so cool. And I start to get worried now because my experience has been, I was hot for Luminous when it was going to be on live when I first heard about it, and now that it's there, I'm like...
But were you hot for it because you thought it was going to be $5?
I was hot for it because I thought it would be cool for a reasonable price, which I don't know what a reasonable price was to me. Maybe
$10.
15 maybe?
15 for everything.
15 for everything,
15
maybe.
or so, right? To play it on on my home theater system and be able to play live.
Yeah.
But not for $35.
No.
Come on. It's a puzzle block game.
Me, do not buy things on Xbox Live. Don't buy the good stuff. Just stop. Like, let them. They need to. They really need to just rethink the entire model. They need to stop. And I said it on EGM Live earlier this week, which comes out on Monday, and hopefully today or tomorrow we're going to have an interview up with Greg Canessa from Microsoft to talk about all of this. Until this sort of like beta testing period ends, don't buy dumb shit. Actually, go to 1UP and we'll put a buyer's guide up of what you should and you can and can't buy or something. Stop. Otherwise,
what did you think yesterday? One of the Sony execs in the presentation noted that there will be nothing that's on the marketplace, on the Sony marketplace when it opens, that's more than $15.
Well, Lumines Live technically isn't more than $15 in the a la carte style packs, so that's what the fuck I think of it.
So you're concerned that it could be a la carte?
It's another rape time simulator. Yeah. Continuing the theory of game rape, gamers are wary of Battlefield 2142's spyware. Garnet, you've talked a lot about that this week. Could you enlighten us a little? Do you want the story?
I don't know what other quotes. I'm sure you've got some stuff coming back from Klepek, right? Because they did a little Q&A with us about it. But basically, what it came down to is they've taken the plunge into interactive marketing within the game world, and to do that, they have to have this program running in the background that's looking at who where. It doesn't have to know who the person is, but where they are, so it knows which ad to target into the game experience while they're doing that. There's this huge disclaimer that comes up in Europe because of the way the EU trade laws are that basically keeps them out of legal trouble, that people looked at and went, holy crap, we're giving up all our privacy. So there's 2 arguments here.
This is no different from what Massive's doing.
It's exactly
with Microsoft,
what Massive,
right?
Yeah, and in fact, EA apparently is doing some stuff with Massive in Carbon.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of
This is where the billboards will change, right?
Right. So it's bringing attention back to
because you're only going 200 miles per hour, and you're going to see those billboards.
But they can count how many times you saw it, and they can drop it in. It's like a banner ad on a website.
It's exactly
basically
like that. It's exactly like that. So this is just drawing attention back to this subject that's really worth talking about again. Of if we're buying all these ads, or if we're paying for these ads are being paid for in these games, why are we still having to pay full price? And why?
I think
why is it not changing
the metrics haven't balanced out yet, and the games are still so expensive that if they don't sell millions of them, the money's got to come from somewhere. Or we don't get more games, right?
Right.
Well, if you're EA, that's okay. Less games from you guys would make Luke happier.
Wow, yeah.
And I think the other thing, especially in a game like Battlefield 2142, that people are going to want to know about is how much is this impacting the performance on my machine, and how much is impacting my gameplay experience by having to deal with this overhead running in the background to serve these ads.
I was pleasantly surprised that 2142 looked a lot better.
It does look a lot better
Than the beta we played?
Newsflash, it's still no Quake Wars.
No.
Not even close.
It's out before Quake Wars,
Yeah, but it's still not even close. All right, next.
Reuters has embedded itself in Second Life.
I mean, we're all over the online world today.
Yeah, this is really sort of just weird, and that's why I want to point it out that there's a news agency opening up a space in an online world like you would be like, Reuters opening a Tennessee branch. It's like the same sort of thing.
Isn't there already a news agency in Second Life, though?
There might be like the proprietary Second Life news enterprise. I think those guys built the building that Reuters lives in Second Life. Wrap your head around that. And the IRS is going to
I hope they're charging them a decent amount of rent.
Well, the thing, and then if they do, and they're making a bunch of money off of the rent, the IRS wants a piece of it, which transitions nicely into talking, which we talked about probably 4 months ago. How,
is that where Wesley Snipes lives?
Virtual economies are now being looked at by the IRS as a potential way to tax your online assets now. Like, you could, in theory, at some point be charged for the value of your digital assets. Like, if your character in WoW was worth a bunch of money.
How much is that mount worth, by the way?
I don't know.
What could you get for it on eBay?
My character's probably worth a lot on eBay.
All right.
It would probably be good.
The IRS will be contacting you later.
Yeah, that's all of the news that I want to talk about outside of yesterday. Inside of yesterday, we can switch to the full Sony Gamers Day rundown.
Wow.
In case you somehow missed it. The first thing is that Sam Kennedy sat down and talked with Phil Harrison about downloadable PS1 games on the PS3. And as they outlined yesterday, at launch, you're not going to be able to play those games. What was it? You're not going to be able to play the games.
You can't play them on your PS3, but you can play them on your PSP. But he said that by the end of the year, you can play your PS1 games on your PS3.
So there will be some sort of PS3 firmware tweaking.
Yeah.
And
are you doing anything, Ted?
Nope.
No.
I mean, as far as PS1 games?
Yeah, on PS3. Are we going to see Disruptor revived, or
that would be really cool.
That
would be awesome.
I'd love that. We'll see.
Well, did
they have to
I just wanted to know what he was.
You for that? Did they say, okay, we want to put Disruptor, or is that something you contact them, or?
I have no idea how that works, actually. So
they haven't talked to you guys about that? You guys are still in the dark on that?
We've been so focused on Resistance.
Because Sam was talking to Phil, and it sounded like... So the PS3 will run a PS1 game when you drop the disc in, and it runs fine.
Exactly.
Okay.
But the stuff that's a digital download requires some emulation software, which they haven't done yet.
Yeah.
So at the moment, the PS3 is just a gateway to spit PS1 games to PSP.
Exactly.
Which is that whole remote play paradigm that Phil outlined yesterday, where one of the things they showed was they started a trailer of Casino Royale, stopped it, said they were going to come back to it. Phil diddled around on the online a little more, and then ported that image to his PSP and continued playing it.
Diddled.
Yeah.
I chose that word for a reason.
Beautiful.
Well, you know what? That's a nice gee whiz moment, but how much... What the hell am I going to do with that? What the hell am I going to do with that?
Yeah, we talked with Shane about it. Like, I'm watching this trailer. I'm watching the 300 trailer in HD. I got to pee really bad. Fucking pause. Port to PSP. Just take it and just stand and pee. Like, what the fuck?
I wish everyone could have the visual of Luke standing. Anyway.
Did you unzip then?
I thought about it, but we had a guest.
Oh.
Really, I mean, what is
airs and graces?
We joke about it. What? It's great, gee whiz. Who cares?
That's the thing.
I only care when it's not just trailers and when it's like proper when the PlayStation Store is letting you download. When it becomes iTunes, which it looks like it's moving towards. When I can download TV shows and movies, then if I can, and by then it'll be not just within the Wi-Fi range of the PS3, it'll be any Wi-Fi spot. Then it's delivering on what's the application they have for the PC that lets you do it right now? The thing that will spit your TV signal anywhere that no one understands how to set up.
The Sony thing?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like TV Anywhere. It works with your PSP.
Right.
Joe has one.
Yeah, it's like that, but it's completely automatic. If you have a PS3, it's completely automatic. You'd log on, and it'd be great. I could be, when I'm stuck in New York in an airport, I can log on. If I've got TV shows on my PS3, I'll be able to stream them.
That's
cool.
That's awesome.
That would be cool. That would be pretty cool.
That's like the Slingbox or whatever.
That's 4D right there. That's
some 4D shit.
God.
The whole PSP connectivity thing so far has been rather gimmicky. The F1, were they showing? You looked at F1 yesterday, yes?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have the PSP.
They didn't have the rearview mirror thing.
Okay.
Well, that's cool too. Where's my rearview mirror holster for the side?
Yeah,
of
I
my
know. I'm like going to put like a sling on the side of my television. That's my rearview mirror. Right there.
Ted sort of actually just kind of shrugged and like looks down like he almost has thought about trying to play F1 and hold the rearview mirror too. Like we're back in the bathroom peeing again.
You know what? It's also like when Nintendo was first playing around with connectivity between the Game Boy and the GameCube. You didn't see very many games that really pulled it off well.
Well, it was you got like a map or something.
Yeah. Crystal Chronicles was like the only game I remember that really I was like, wow, this is.
Zelda Four Swords.
Okay, Zelda Four Swords. I did not play that one, but so it had the same.
I forgot about that.
It took a while for them to actually get that running. So I mean, they've got some growing room with the PSP.
It's cute.
Yeah, so far it's just cute, and that's it.
So that's good news. Now gloom and doom. Sony. Jack Tretton, who presented yesterday, said that the honest answer regarding worldwide shipment numbers for Sony's PS3 is that the worldwide shipment numbers that Sony's allocated and outlined is more of a target.
Are you surprised?
No, of course I'm not surprised, but I mean, this is
every single hardware launch. There's always shortages, and even if the day before they say you're gonna have 500,000, you don't know if they're gonna have 500,000. I mean, it's just
who can really track those?
The guy that runs a video game channel at eBay is rubbing his hands together with glue right now.
I'm still thinking about it. No achievement system for PS3 games. This is something that sort of surfaced. We talked a while ago about entitlements being the sort of like Shu wrote about it in EGM a while ago.
Well, Geronimo brought up just playing. You know, one of the reasons he wants to start playing 360 games now he's done with Bully is that he wants achievements and going back to the old high score system. I'm kind of surprised it's not there at all, right?
Well, this is Jack Tretton again, and Tretton says we didn't mention that regarding achievements, but it's our intention that we would have it, although I think it would be game-centric. It'd be very difficult to draw analogies between your success on SOCOM and your success on Madden. Madden players care about people's success on Madden, which sort of ties into what you talked about a little earlier with Resistance has its own ranking system.
We have our own ranking system for online, and we also have special unlockables in the single-player game. You get skill points in the game, and you can unlock special things that will also show up in multiplayer. So I think that it gives developers still have a lot of latitude in terms of what they are doing on the PlayStation 3.
It just won't necessarily. It doesn't sound like it'll lump all those into a single number for like EPing purposes, like what the gamer scores.
Is there anything that's attached to your profile, like reputation or any of those kind of things, or is it just is your profile just your name online?
Well, for us, we're focusing on everything is Resistance centric. So it's all about your military rank online and the stuff that you've unlocked that you can show off when you're playing the game, your stats that you can show to all the other guys who are playing Resistance.
But that's only within Resistance.
That's within Resistance.
And when I'm in the cross media bar, if I go to look at Luke, is it going to show anything that he's done
in Resistance?
Just attached to his profile.
I don't know.
You don't know.
No.
Okay.
It's Ted Price from Insomniac, second party developer Sony. Does not know. Another thing, Sony. This was a little bit confusing for us yesterday. We talked about it, but the ability to download games to your PS3 and then share among 5 other units. It's sort of
very iTunes-y.
Very iTunesy and sort of authorizing and still sort of vague. But is 5 PS3s to share it on enough?
But you can.
Wow.
But it's $3,000 in hardware.
But what we don't know is, can I download it with my profile? And then go to your place, log in as my profile, and download it and leave it for you.
Yeah.
Or is it just attached to my profile? Because if it's just profile-based, you can do that on 360.
And tote it around on a memory card.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the hardware is just the box that the thing is in. It's just got to be attached to your name.
The last thing I want to talk about is just sort of generally accessories prices. Like we finally saw Sony unveil how much everything was going to cost. Memory cards, the memory card adapter that'll let you port your PS2 and PS1 games to your PS3 is $15. The controllers are $50, which is good.
Controllers have gotten so expensive.
And the Sony controller and the Xbox 360 controller are like the cheap ones because the Wii's like what, $75 for a Wiimote and a nunchuck.
$60 for both.
Who was it last week that was ranting and raving about how bad the 6-axis was? It was some online site.
IGN said it was one of the worst controllers.
All right, so you know what? That's just crazy. That's silly. It's not one of the worst controllers ever. But I got to tell you, after playing,
DualShock 2 is still one of the best controllers ever. I think.
But I got to tell you, I think that as far as just controller ergo goes, they've lost to Microsoft now by sticking to that old design, because you know what, I'm more comfortable with my thumbstick. The whole arrangement of the PS2 DualShock pad came about from sticking to analog sticks onto the original digital PlayStation pad, and they haven't redesigned since. It wasn't an ergonomic design. It was like, wow, we have this.
Where will they fit?
Where will they fit? Let's put them on there. So why are we still with our head down? Yeah, the Batarang looks silly, but that was just a concept. I was really hopeful that they would come back and have something that showed, hey, we've thought about designing a controller, and instead they said,
they have a little bit with the triggers.
The triggers are really nice.
I'm not into those yet. I'm not sold on the new L2R2 triggers.
I kind of like them.
Yeah, it gets better.
Yeah, I kind of like them.
And another thing we talked about yesterday was while I was playing Resistance, Ted, it's really light. The controller
it is really
a little
light.
That is what's nice. I mean, you feel like you're not even holding anything, and I think for us, because you can disconnect the controller and it's completely wireless, that's great. And it's easy to use. I have a very different opinion than you on the controller. My hands, I like the size of the controller. I've always liked the DualShock, and I like this one even better because of the weight, and also because the dead zones the dead zones are much better on this one.
That's cool.
And so you have better camera control, and that's crucial in a first-person shooter.
Yes.
And it's made a big difference for us.
So maybe they could keep that stick control, but I've really gotten accustomed to having my thumb comfortably, like my left thumb, especially playing Halo. You know, Halo and shooters.
The weight, though, came up a lot yesterday. I think Sam asked Phil about it, and he related it to clothing. He said, like, your interaction with the device, you shouldn't be aware of it. It should be like, you can't feel your clothes so you shouldn't feel your controller. But I think there's an opposite thing of that. It's like when you're driving a car, you want to feel the steering wheel. And there are some things where I think you require some sense of maybe holding on to something, and maybe it works for some games. But I got the sense with Resistance that there wasn't a lot of feedback coming from someone.
There is
no
feedback.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but even in what you're holding, there's no. And maybe it's just because we're conditioned to it.
I think the key, though, is we wanted people to forget they're holding the controller. You want to be in the game and not really think about what your hands are doing. It needs to become natural so that you're not distracted by this heavy weight that you've got in your lap or your hands.
But what about not having feedback? What about not having the kick of that shotgun?
No rumble. Let's talk.
You know, we put a lot of on the Ratchet games when we're using the DualShock. We put a lot of effort into incorporating the rumble. Yeah. But I think it was a lot of effort for very little return when it came down to it. And I mean, because some people liked it and some people didn't like it, and we always had the option to turn it off, and people would turn it off because it was distracting. And everybody has a different opinion on it. My personal opinion was it was a lot of time to implement it, and it didn't make as much of a difference as we would have liked to in terms of the gameplay. But I know you guys have a different opinion on that.
Well, that's the thing. Like in single player, watching you play yesterday, I was talking with Skip, trolling while John was playing before I played, because you're watching that the machine gun type weapon just shake.
Okay, here's the thing though. If we were to implement rumble, every time you fired one of the guns or you got hit, it would never stop rumbling. I mean, because these games are all about action and about shooting and getting shot, and it's not. It gets overwhelming. Sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, and then I was going to counter that with when I play Halo online, I turn rumble off. It's like one of the first settings I change because I don't want my hands shaking when we're playing competitively.
But you know what? In single player, I think rumble has been around so long that you discount it because you've gotten so accustomed to it. Go play a game like Call of Duty 2, which you can go right upstairs and play right now, and turn rumble off and play through some of the first levels, and then go back and play with it on, and you'll be like, you know what? The people who use it right don't overdo it. It's just a subtle part of like bringing you into like the experience.
It's an added dimension. I mean, look at what Metal Gear did with it, and I mean, people that have used it imaginatively to actually, it's more than just. But I think there is something. There's some of the weapons, or I mean, like grenades. There was no visceral feedback, and again, if we'd never had it, it wouldn't be an issue. But there's been 5, 6, 7 years since the DualShock first hit, and it's sort of an expectation. So now take it away, and you're just aware that there's something not quite right.
And also the fact that the controller feels light, it has no weight to it even.
I was amazed by how light it was, considering it's got batteries in it. I mean,
it's really light.
Yeah. The weight thing wasn't an issue to me as much as the not having the feedback. It's weird.
I also think, all of us haven't spent that much time with the PS3 controller.
No, we haven't.
So, I mean, I think it's, we're basing it on 15 minutes.
That's a good point. We've been using it at Insomniac for a long time now, and I guess I'm much more used to it because we haven't been using a DualShock for a long time.
Luke, one thing you didn't mention that I can't believe, Come on, the first few thousand of these machines, Talladega Nights, Blu-ray included.
You wonder why I didn't mention
Come on,
it.
that they told us that's what their customers really want with a PS3.
It's a chance to, I think someone said it yesterday. It's a chance to watch a Blu-ray movie and then break it when they're done with it.
All right, so we'll let you decide whether or not you want to break it. You only got a couple of weeks to wait now as this closes in on the PS3 launch. Ted Price, awesome segment today, man.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
That was awesome. We loved it. It was fantastic. Everybody else, tell us what you thought. We'll be on boards.oneup.com. Ted will probably take a look around, I hope.
Yeah.
And we'll get back to you next week.